I'm super excited to bring you this month's episode of the On TRAC podcast because we recorded it live and in person in New York City during the 2024 Knowledge Graph Conference. I'm your host, Jonathan, and I was joined this time by internet pioneer Dr. Bob Metcalfe, who invented Ethernet, won the Turing Award, and is now an advisor to OriginTrail. Also joining me was Amos, aka TriniZone, who is a Web3 and DKG educator, as well as the founder of the Tracverse project, which we'll get into in this episode, and OriginTrail co-founder and CTO Branimir, who is of course a regular friend of the show. On TRAC is the show where we bring you all the latest and juiciest developments from the OriginTrail ecosystem and the verifiable internet for artificial intelligence that the OriginTrail technology is crucially enabling. This month, we explore a wide range of topics centered around the idea of a truly open AI, the verifiable internet for AI, Metcalfe's law and network effects, and we explore some real-world adoption use cases, including Amos's Tracverse, upcoming paranets, and much more. So, let's listen to the conversation, and I hope you enjoy. Welcome to the On TRAC podcast. Today we have a very special and unique episode. We are all live here in New York City for the Knowledge Graph Conference, 2024 Knowledge Graph Conference. 3 megaminds and then myself. We have, again, special guests to go with our special episode. So starting on my right, we have Dr. Bob Metcalfe, who is an internet pioneer, the inventor of Ethernet, creator of Metcalfe's Law, winner of the Turing Award, and all-around genius, from what I understand. We have Branimir, the co-founder of OriginTrail and CTO of OriginTrail, who today presented at the Knowledge Graph Conference. And we have Amos, famous Amos, aka TriniZone. He is a DKG educator, coder, programmer, and also the creator of the Tracverse, DKG-based Storyverse project, which we will get into in a bit. So welcome, everybody. You still jet-lagged, Branimir?
By now I'm okay, but I do feel like I'm jet-lagged. This city is just like, it's full of energy, but it consumes a lot of energy. But it's really good. I really like it.
Yeah, I feel like it's a place that if you need to reset your schedule, it's like, really is a city that's 24/7.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you could go to bed whenever you want, wake up whenever you want, sleep whenever you want, and you're kind of in control in that sense to kind of reset your system in the way that you want. So if you don't want to change, you just want to stay out all night and party and not stay on European time, this is also the city you can do that.
Good to know. Good to know. Awesome.
So like I mentioned, we're here for the Knowledge Graph Conference. We have a lot of fun topics we're going to go over today. The conference itself, we'll do some thoughts about that, what a truly open AI means. We're going to talk about the verifiable internet for AI. We're going to talk about Metcalfe's law and network effects and go over some exciting use cases, including, but not limited to, Tracverse. So, how was the conference? How did the speech go? Any fun takeaways or recaps you want to give?
Yeah, it was fun, but I'm actually curious what did the rest of it. What do you think, Professor? How was the conference for you?
Well, it's not over. That's for one thing.
Okay, true.
And this is my 4th year at this conference, and I've been watching it build, and it's something ready to happen here. And your talk was kind of advisory as to what we should all do. The conference needs a demo. You remember the first time you used Google, you type something in, you hit return, and you went, whoa, look at that answer. And then when you use ChatGPT-4, you type something in there, and whoa, that's great. Well, the knowledge graph world needs a demo. And this conference, you could see, they were all waiting for the demos are too small right now.
What about you, Amos? Did you have any takeaways?
Yeah, actually, I did see an interesting couple of projects and points made at the event. One in particular I was really excited about is to see how knowledge graph merged with gaming. That I didn't see that topic last year. And this year, it was actually really exciting to see true budding ecosystems from the top minds are looking at knowledge graphs and gaming directly, literally. So that was something I really enjoyed to consume. And of course, spending some time with Bob was probably one of the best experiences as well. Literally spending time with a internet pioneer. But yeah,
That's great. It's great to hear that I'm up there with gaming.
Almost.
Yeah, you definitely are. I definitely had a great time.
It's awesome that you guys could have come. It's a really good conference. What I really particularly liked is that like everybody's doing LLMs plus knowledge graphs.
Yes.
Like, literally everybody.
Yes.
And in a way, everybody's doing RAG. Some call it graph RAG, some call it RAG. It's still so new that the names haven't really sunk in. But that verifies basically our hypothesis that everybody will be doing this and that it makes sense to connect all of these systems. If they're just isolated, we get another data silo situation all over the place. But maybe even worse, because we get AI that not just hallucinates, but also centralizes power, creates bias of all kinds. So yeah, it was great to see that like everybody's moving in that direction and essentially in the direction that we're pitching for the verifiable internet, because I think it's inevitable that we need to connect these things, just as Ethernet and internet were inevitable when you look at it from this perspective.
So you were in a room, I don't know how many people were, it was almost standing room, but it was... There's 650 people at the conference. You must have had 50 of them, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
And what do you think their reaction was to your broaching the topic of a distributed DKG?
Interesting. Some of the questions were very sort of inspective. They were trying to like understand it better. And some of them were around the topic of like, why would somebody share knowledge? Like something that like a company produces new research, for example, and they want to take all the value for themselves. But it makes sense in a way because a lot of the companies present were building knowledge graphs for many years now to try to get the value out of it. And it's a stage that needs to happen. And that also means that like, not all of the data in the world will be public. That's a common thing. That's why we built the DKG with a feature that you can have private knowledge inside. What you do, however, as a first principle have to take into account when you think of these things is that essentially knowledge is inherently valuable. So if it's valuable to you, there's probably more ways you can use it that it brings you value, such as, for example, knowledge marketplaces. Imagine that I have some really amazing AI, but it's closed and I keep all the knowledge closed, but maybe Amos has a question that this could answer. And if this AI can figure out that it's not actually a problematic thing that, let's say, you purchase an answer to that question, why not let you do it? Why? So I don't think it's a binary world that's going to stay like that forever. It's probably going to open up more. But yeah, I think the overall reaction was very positive, especially given that some of the people have been in the industry for like as long as you've been in the industry, pretty much, meaning the general tech industry. For example, Deborah.
Oh.
Deborah was very excited about, and she's one of the people who basically invented ontologies and has been building them for her whole life. Yeah, so it's cool to see.
So do you remember the question she asked you?
Kind of. Yeah.
I'll refresh your memory.
Yeah.
She was concerned about how you would be sure that the quality of the data stayed high. She was suspicious that in the distributed environment, I mean, we've seen this happen, the quality of data starts heading downhill. I don't remember what your answer was. What was that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I have a good answer as well. Yeah, basically, the difference in having something be distributed and centralized is it's quite big, but like you have some different approaches that you can take in both scenarios. In a centralized scenario, sometimes it's easier because you have one decision maker or one entity that can decide like, okay, I'm going to take this in and take this out. So it's like kind of a centralized entity, and that normally creates bias. In a decentralized way, when you have multiple entities agree on something, you get a higher chance of reaching the truth. It's a little bit more complicated process, but processes such as voting on chain that we have on NeuroWeb, or processes where multiple different AI agents agree on something, can be done in a distributed manner, and that can bring more veracity actually to the actual knowledge. So there are technical and human ways to tackle this. And that's the key benefit really with the DKG, because it's all open and anybody can participate. So that means when Deborah, for example, creates a paranet, she can specify what are some of the key properties for quality, and then we can all participate in it and essentially iterate with it. So it's a bit of a longer answer, but essentially the point here being is that we collectively can manage this better than one entity inherently.
Right, but these, what do you call them,
Paranets?
these paranets create opportunities for many different kinds of quality criteria.
Yes.
And then they can compete in the
market.
In the market.
Yes, absolutely. So you can have 5 paranets for the same topic. Yes. And then the best one wins. Or they synergize. That's also an option because effectively it's like local area networks connecting via the internet, for example. It's a similar analogy. But yeah, it was very interesting. And several people from, we cannot really name much, but from like bigger centralized companies were very interested in the concept of paranets and how we can synergize with their technology, which is really exciting because I really like that the two worlds are no longer like observed as some sort of a dichotomy, like one versus the other.
Oh, sorry, what 2 worlds are you talking about?
Well, let's say this Web 2 world of the centralized companies and then Web 3 world of the decentralized systems, really, which are run by communities rather than companies. It's great to see that there's less and less of a gap, or at least it seems like that, because the interest in what we're doing was really, really high. But yeah, overall, I think it was a really, really cool conference. I wish it lasted longer, actually. I learned quite a bit.
Well, for me, I bring like the perspective of a community builder, not being on the team. For me personally, it was nice to walk around and mention OriginTrail and have engineers from big entities. I don't know, Barclays, there's one from Barclays, have these different engineers know, hey, yeah, he's talking about those guys, the OriginTrail guys, and that's the one thing you hear a lot too, the OriginTrail guys, So it was nice to like see these different entities, talk about them, and just hear how they view the DKG, not just the DKG, but knowledge graphs in general. Of course, it's the knowledge graph conference. They're speaking about knowledge graphs. But as a community member, as a team, somebody looking to build something top of the DKG, it just feels good after so much time, So that's why for me, the conference really brings it solidifies that the DKG is truly here. And it's something that anybody and everybody should be participating in if such high engineers equally view this as something that's this competent. So
Let's dig into it a little bit then, get a little deeper down into the rabbit hole of the DKG, so to speak. Knowledge graphs, LLM, AI, all these topics we've just been throwing back and forth, the adoption curve. How does this all fit into the broader vision for OriginTrail, the DKG becoming the verifiable internet for artificial intelligence? And also, what does that mean? So we had a whole long episode about this a couple episodes ago. Shout out if you've not watched that, go watch it. But in short, what does it mean and how does everything we've discussed so far fit into this?
OriginTrail itself is not going to become the whole verifiable internet for AI. OriginTrail itself is a component, a connectivity component to which other services in paranets or the kinds of like blockchains are connected via. The idea of the verifiable internet for AI is that we converge 3 different technologies, basically artificial intelligence, blockchain, crypto, and essentially converge that with the internet. So build it essentially as a new layer on top of the internet. Professor was busy building the initial several layers. Then Tim Berners-Lee joined and built the upper layers, the application layers with the World Wide Web. He actually had the idea of the semantic web, which is very much what we have also been inspired by. But the verifiable internet in that sense is an internet where we can trust AI, where we can trust the sources of information that we get exposed to. Because as AI becomes really the UI for us, we even do it, and we don't know it, that there's a lot of AI under the Google search engine or the things like that we use every day. We really need to be able to trust it. And to introduce this trust, we bring this concept of verifiable internet for AI that leverages blockchain as trust root and leverages the DKG, the decentralized knowledge graph, as basically a semantic network to discover different knowledge and knowledge sources, be that AIs or more traditional legacy systems. Notice when I'm saying this is really about a network. So the vision is that when we converge these 3 technologies, what we get and that we don't have with internet today is verifiable identity. So we can know that certain information comes from certain source, But because we put it in a graph, we can also match it together. So we can take different statements, put them together and see what fits and what doesn't fit. We can check for quality. We can do all kinds of things on the protocol level and yet maintain ownership so that it's not centralized in one specific place or a specific company, but rather managed by a global community, which is what decentralization brought us. So it's really exciting because like it's really like these small experiments in RAG and AI solutions keep popping up like mushrooms everywhere. And the DKG and verifiable internet is kind of like the mycelium that connects the mushrooms. It's actually the underground
network.
stuff. The network. Yeah. So yeah, I mean it's an evolving idea, and it has very much to do with connectivity and Metcalfe's law, which is why we're super happy to have Professor with us, and for many years now advising us and giving us feedback, including on my today's presentation. So thank you very much for that again.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to hurt you.
Yeah, you didn't. It's fine. It's only the inventor of the internet giving critique.
Right.
So this AI thing is a pretty old idea, and it's been coming and going since the 50s.
As we spoke about with Marvin Minsky and
Yep. My thesis advisor at MIT was Marvin Minsky.
Yep.
So that was 50 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So AI has been going like this, and there's two flavors of it. There's symbolic AI and statistical AI, and the recent flare-up, which is very exciting, is the statistical half. But what we saw at this conference was the symbolic half coming to the rescue.
Right.
The statistical half has flaws. For example, hallucinations and efficiency, and the list goes on. The best talk at this conference wasn't yours. It was Juan's. And what Juan Cicada of Austin, Texas, where I'm from, he's also with Data.World, a company. He was knowledge graphs to the rescue of statistical AI. He describes experiments in which by layering the graphs on top of the large language models, you could improve accuracy, 3x improve X. And he wrote it up all in an official paper and so on. But that was this conference, which is not an AI conference. This is the graph conference. And as you pointed out, everybody was talking about AI. Mm-hmm. And this is the graph conference coming to the rescue of AI.
Yeah.
One thing I thought was really impactful is, again, this is the most, I guess, the best brains on the planet come together at this conference to talk about knowledge graph and knowledge graphs and RAGs. And, most of them have not even began to even look at the decentralization factors and how that plays into what they're now building. So it's insane to me to see the DKG being light years ahead, really. Well, not literally, but figuratively speaking, ahead in terms of, okay, they're figuring out that, okay, we need RAGs to make AI better, or knowledge graphs to piece into this system to make it better. But we already did that a couple of years ago, and it's just nice
So RAGs, you've mentioned them several times now. Last year, I never heard of RAGs. So RAGs is a this year. What is a RAG?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's short for retrieval-augmented generation. And essentially the whole point is that instead of asking a statistical AI, an LLM, for like a question, and then it giving you an answer from its knowledge, you can provide it some previously retrieved knowledge from a knowledge base. So for example, you have your own knowledge base on like in your company or like a personal knowledge base. You can search on it, find the relevant information, and then give it to the LLM to basically sort of package it up a little nicer for you. So this minimizes hallucination quite a bit because effectively the LLM is not given a task to think so much. It's given a task to reformulate something that was found, or rather retrieved, in this classical, let's say, information retrieval way. This has been a branch of computer science for a very long time, information retrieval, so we know how to do this really well. One of the great ways to do it is using a graph. Kind of like the way people use RAG today is you can use different ways. You can use this vector RAG, but with the graph RAG, you can be very, very much more precise. And that's part of what the discovery was by Juan, but also the people presenting kind of a new version of RAG, which is GraphRag. But essentially, the point is that you ground the AI in something. You don't let it go like crazy anywhere. So
I thought an example was, for example, arithmetic, 2 plus 2. Now you can hand 2 plus 2 to the model, and it can look for 9 million instances of 2 plus 2 and see what it equals. Or you can just give it to a calculator and go 2 plus 2 is 4 and be done with it right like that. Is that a RAG?
it's close. It's close. That gets more towards something like called agentic behavior, because that if you would have some sort of a algorithm to understand that, this is a calculator problem, so I should go and use the tool which is named the calculator. And then for another type of problem, it could understand, this is that type of a problem, so I should use like a shovel or something like that. So it's similar to RAG, but it's kind of a next step. It has an ability to reason what type of tool it needs to use. But it's very relevant because when it comes to the DKG and paranets can have many different kinds of services. So one type of service is, for example, a chatbot. Everybody was showing chatbots in the last couple of days. But it can be something else as well. It can be a Google search, for example. It can be a text-to-voice translation. It can be any other type of service that you can imagine calling an API. So these are effectively activities like using the calculator that are equivalent to it that is also part of the DRAG framework. So the idea is that you don't only have to retrieve from like a static knowledge base, but rather you can use a tool that produces new knowledge. So it does fit into the paradigm very much.
So it seems like in terms of the adoption curve that Amos was mentioning earlier, OriginTrail is figuratively light years ahead of everybody else. People know about the OriginTrail guys. Their name precedes them. You were saying, Branimir, you were having some interesting conversations you can't talk about on the record.
That's helpful.
Maybe some other time.
But it seems like one of the things that will push along this adoption curve is these network effects. And that's where Metcalfe's law comes into play. So we have, of course, with us the man who created Metcalfe's law. So can you briefly summarize for the dummies here like myself, what exactly is Metcalfe's law? What is it talking about? And how do you see this principle playing out for AI and a technology like OriginTrail?
Yeah, the word I didn't like in your introduction there was exactly. What exactly is Metcalfe? There's nothing exactly about Metcalfe's law. It's numerically, it's the value of a network grows as the square, that's the key number, the square of the number of attachments. That comes from the simple observation that if you have n nodes, they can connect to n times n minus 1. All the possible connections goes up as n times n minus 1. Each one of them can be connected to all the others. So it's not very exact. So we like to say the value grows as the square. The finesse there is value. What is value? Is it the number of connections? So I've looked at this briefly. I did a study of the first 10 years of Facebook, and the value did grow as the square in that one case. But it's not important that it be exactly correct. It's just basically it just emphasizes the obvious statement that if you tie things together, they're more valuable if you don't. And we discovered this my company in the early days discovered this, the early days of the personal computer, where we sold small networks and our customers didn't find them useful. So I made up this slide for my sales force. I had a 6-person sales force at the time. Made a 35 millimeter slide that showed that the cost of the network was, the way you got on the network was to plug a card into your PC. And that card would plug into a cable, and then the PCs could all talk. There weren't very many PCs. Our customers complained small networks were not useful. So I made the slide that said, the reason that your network is not useful is that it's too small. And you need to buy more of our products. And they believed us. And they bought more, and value arrived, and you have it today.
Yeah.
So then a reasonable question, if you're interested, is, was I lying when I made that slide? I was at the time head of sales and marketing of my company. But no, I wasn't lying. I was reporting. I had worked at Xerox for 8 years. We built an internet inside of Xerox, and it was good. So when I said the network will be valuable if it gets big enough, I wasn't lying. I was reporting what we had observed. We had a time machine. We went out into the future, saw that it was good, and then we came back into the present. So the applicability of Metcalfe's law to AI is just very straightforward. If you make smart things, and then they'll be smarter, but then if you connect them together, they'll be smarter still because they can leverage off of one another. And you'll notice that wasn't a very exact answer to your question.
It was a good answer, though. So what is the value when it comes to OriginTrail? What is the added value of building up this network and connecting the knowledge together?
You just explained it, right? Yeah, it's, well, I mean, you can observe connectivity on different layers, right? So one is the physical connectivity of machines. And then we had like shared printers, like you said, which was the first killer app, if I'm not mistaken, of the Ethernet, and many other things. But then the next layer was the World Wide Web, right? We got the link, the virtual link, which is the URL basically. And we had pages that had like things you can click on, blue text underlined, which made them connected. And all of a sudden you have a web of content. And that was another connectivity manifestation that basically built on the previous connectivity manifestation. So OriginTrail is kind of a next layer of that. It connects not pages together in some form of referential way. It combines knowledge together, concepts, statements. You can literally find not like a Google search and then a page on something and then you have to sift through it and so on, but rather you find the statement on Metcalfe's law as a concept, and then you can see where it was applied and all of the videos that were about it, for example, from the 60s, or, it's another layer of connectivity. It's connectivity by meaning versus connectivity by pages, or really like kind of the medium. And a big part that DKG also introduces here is each one of these concepts or pieces of information has a source. So it's also connectivity between people or AIs that are sources of information. And it's important to mention that AIs are going to be sources of information because they are effectively generating content as we speak. So the internet used to be all human generated, right? Maybe we made a script to automate something, but it was all human made. And now most of the content, and there's going to be a time really soon where more content will be generated by AI than by humans or on AI, let's say. So we have to account for that. We have to take identity and some form of attestations about these AIs. Who owns it? Is it like...
Can you elaborate on what it means for an AI to create the data? So most of the data is going to be created by AIs.
Yeah.
What kind of data are you talking about?
Yeah, so for example, if you go to ChatGPT today and ask it to write a poem about Metcalfe's law, it will write one. And that's AI generated, and that gets stored somewhere and probably published somewhere. People usually use ChatGPT or similar tools, Claude and the others, to write blog posts, make music. There's this whole new cool tool,
Suno.
Crazy.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
You just say, I want, I don't know, country but techno version, and then it makes it for you, and it's amazing. And then images, I mean, and it does it so well that it's also a little bit scary because it can generate like a realistic photo of Bob Metcalfe, I don't know,
That's really scary.
with a Russian, I don't know, hat or something like that. But like my point being is, it's becoming cheap to generate content, and in a way that we have inflation of content, which is questionable. It might be a hallucination. It might be using what I was hinting to, your image as Bob Metcalfe as a person to generate who knows what, something you might not agree with. And so point being here is that real data versus synthetic data, which is how this is called, is kind of a new duel. And as synthetic data is inflationary and real data is not, it's not like infinitely cheap to generate it, it's going to be even more valuable. So connecting it in a graph, not disregarding synthetic data, that should also be there, but knowing which one is which is going to be very, very beneficial. And that's going to be a topic.
So I heard a fact today which bears on this, which is, so we have ChatGPT-4 and it's awesome. The model that answers those questions was generated by an algorithm from a corpus of data, and the CPU time to compute that model was $60 million. Not a lot of us can afford to generate poems for $60 million. Is it possible that graphs can improve the efficiency of AI?
Yeah, actually, it's a very good point. They talked about, actually, last year at KGC, that you can save a lot on cost when it comes to inference time. So using RAG and DRAG especially, you can, instead of asking ChatGPT to, for example, I don't know, what's the capital of Paris? And it has to, capital of France, which is Paris. See, I'm hallucinating right here.
Branimir AI, first hallucination.
Hallucination live. But yeah, the point here being is, if you ask a huge large language model, which has a lot of these parameters, it has to activate pretty much a lot of them, if not all of them, to produce a simple word, Paris, But you could also find that very easily in a classical graph sense. So if you do a graph query, it's about 100 to 1,000 times cheaper than to query a large language model. And that's like also doesn't take into consideration this 60 million that you said that was used previously to train it. So you can save a lot of cost actually by using a curated knowledge graph with AI. You can have a smaller model, cheaper to produce, and it can spend less energy and computer cycles essentially when it queries, when you give it, rather than let it just hallucinate on its own input through RAG. So it's a big difference. And the graphs are, at this marriage of neurosymbolic AI, are really, really a good solution for that as well. In a way, for DKG, we can also observe on kind of a network level, because there's a cost of producing a knowledge base, right? So let's say each of us, the four of us, we're building our own AI. And then you have a knowledge base and an LLM and some UI, and all four of us have to create everything. But if we have one shared knowledge base, if we join this knowledge together, not only do we get network effects, that it's like more powerful, I can reuse your knowledge. So I didn't have to spend money and energy to produce the graph elements. There's papers in the space of knowledge graphs, a couple of years old, but still relevant, that say that the cost of producing one triple, which is one statement in the graph, subject, predicate, object statement, was around on the order of magnitude of, let's say, $1, which is very costly when you think about it. Like 100 statements, $100, very simple statement, like Paris, capital of France. Research shows that it is expensive, so it makes sense to reuse things. And since we have a lot of these built out knowledge graphs, they can save a lot of energy for both builders using DRAG, but also for AI. So we don't have to like burn all the forests down with spending so much energy, because there's a lot of energy cost as well. And I know you're very, very into geothermal energy. I'm curious to see like how those converge actually together with the AI space, because it seems like we're just like siphoning up all the energy of the planet to generate maybe random images of
cat images.
Cat images.
Cat images.
Well, there's plenty of heat in the earth. There's several billion years worth, so you don't have to worry about that. But one could imagine going out in the desert somewhere and just drilling down a couple of kilometers and putting a turbine there and hooking that up to a little data center and start creating networks of information that you make available then through the world. And it would just sit there. The heat would come up and make the information and serve the world.
Run a DKG node in the desert. It's a good idea, yeah.
You can do billions of years of cat photos with all that energy.
From the earth.
Yeah. So one of the other themes of this episode, along sticking to the AI topic, is this idea of there being a truly open AI, which to me then sounds like there's a closed AI as well, which maybe would be, I guess I don't have to name names, I'll leave that up to you if you want to, but could be some of the major AI services out there that are privately owned with private knowledge bases. So first, what does a truly open AI mean? I guess I'll start with that question.
It's a really good question. And the point of being truly open is that anybody can not just use it, anybody can contribute to it. And that means contribute not just in sense of contribute your knowledge, but actually run your node of the truly open AI in a desert or wherever, but also like build it. So basically opening it up in such a way that there's no limitation in anybody being able to come and contribute. So a truly open AI in this world has to be an AI that we know what kind of information it has access to, whose this information is, who was the publisher of the information, or rather knowledge, how it works, but also giving us choice that we can pick. So we can pick blockchains, we can pick different LLMs, we can maybe use multiple of them, versus an AI where we don't know actually what's in the back end. We don't know what it's been trained on. We suspect it's been trained on our data. It's been quite a bit of a topic because data is inherently valuable. Everybody's trying to scrape as much as they can of it to train AI right now. And as Professor said, AI would go up and then down because it would run out of data. And they will run out of data again. So the point here being is that if we build a system that we can crowdsource knowledge together and we can appropriate to artists, to content creators, to anybody like researchers, and give them the power to have incentives for it, to have the ability to attribute value to themselves, IP, and manage how this whole thing works through decentralized governance. To me, that sounds much more like a really open AI. So that is the path we're trying to take here. And but the big point of that path is like we, as in OriginTrail community, even though we're a cool community, pretty big, we're not the only ones who can build. We need other people to help us with.
So in the future, you see a bunch of servers out there, some open and some closed. And your theory is the open ones will outperform the closed ones.
Essentially, yes. The closed ones we see as kind of, they will still be there, they will be useful, but they will have a bit of a different purpose. Just like you have Ethernet and Internet have a difference in the sense of how they're being used. For example, local networks being more closed in, so you can use them within one company, but there's a tremendous amount of value in having Internet where we can all have public spaces for companies, websites, services, and so on. It's going to be both, but the ones that are out in the public will be able to leverage value that comes from connectivity, which the others will have much less of.
So this open-closed battle is currently being fought by Sam and Elon.
In a way, yeah.
Well, remember, OpenAI used to be open source, and now it's not.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's Sam.
Okay, I see. Yeah.
What's his name? It's Sam, right?
Yeah,
Sam,
yeah.
I've never met him, but he's he didn't win his job in a raffle. He's really good. But then Elon is also formidable. So Elon put 100 million, as I understand it, put 100 million into the open source version, and now he's annoyed that Sam is converting it into a closed AI. But this is the battle you have in mind when you coin the term open AI.
Yes, and a little bit more than that. So the idea would be that you can use both OpenAI and Grok, which is Elon's version, with an open knowledge base that everybody can contribute to, so that they have their place as well, but it's also the entire network of knowledge that we get to crowdsource together. So it's much more than a battle between two companies.
And I feel like this ties back to the earlier point that I made about OriginTrail being like years ahead in terms of understanding the power of decentralization and then merging that with knowledge graphs and AI technology. Because most entities today, as you see with like Sam Altman or OpenAI, as we say, at some point, these ecosystems will be limited because they're based on human data. At the end of the day, humans still have to create this data. So the true commodity is still people, at least in terms of a battle between a closed AI and an open AI, right? We need new data to train these models on. People still need to create new things. People still need to be, great at doing whatever they do to contribute to the further development of AI. So I think that what OriginTrail did by democratizing access to these systems is truly the key to, again, fighting things like model collapse, How do we keep getting new data in? Well, you would want people to contribute, but nobody wants to contribute if the AI is just going to take my data and spit it back out to me, and I just lost all my value. I lost like 15 hours of creative work, so you need to have that balance, that equilibrium between incentivization and the knowledge graph ecosystem itself. So that's exactly where OriginTrail is. Just there's nothing like it yet, and probably nothing like it that will come for some time. I believe OriginTrail hit the nail on the head in that regard.
You touched on a point. It wasn't so long ago that we were talking about the tsunami of data.
Mm-hmm.
The amount of data that being generated by the human race is doubling every 3 seconds, and we don't have enough storage for it. But you raised the question that maybe we're going to run out of data. So which is it? Are we going to run out of data, or do we have more data than we know how to handle? I don't know.
Well, I mean, for me personally, if you want my personal opinion, of course, AI, as Branna said before, AI will continue to create more content at rates that humans just can't, because of course they're machines.
So the tsunami is going to be even more.
At least on the AI front. But I also predict something equally powerful taking place on the human front, because AI is also going to facilitate human innovation. So yes, we may have spent 15 hours creating a piece of artwork before, but now we create that artwork in maybe 20 minutes. But at the same point in time, it's still something new that came from a human. And so we're able to output greater content at greater rates as well. So from my opinion, I think it's nobody knows the answer pretty much. It is one of those where we'll see what happens. AI generates its content, but I also see humans getting a very powerful upgrade in our ability to output as well. So perhaps there's some sort of equilibrium to be found. Whoever wants to run the numbers on that, come and do it at OriginTrail, I don't know. But yeah, that's my opinion. Perhaps a more educated response could be found to the left.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. But it's a tricky question, because there's running out a kind of definition, I guess, where pretty much scraping the whole web and training AI on it, it's a massive undertaking, but it has limits. It's very there's not an unlimited amount of data. Yes, it grows quickly, but it's limited. And the problem is it gets polluted, if you will, with all of this synthetic data, and this causes this thing which we talked about, the model collapse, which basically deteriorates AI. It's not so much of a problem of, are we going to run out of it? Are we going to run out of good data?
Quality data.
Yeah. Right. Are we going to feed something that deteriorates the AI? And it remains to be seen. But
what's emerging is a chaotic feedback loop. The AI is creating the data, and the data is creating the AI. So that's a chaotic, emergent system. So it could go either way.
Kind of the explanation, from what I understood, is that because the LLMs are statistical machines, they try to basically they get some input which is not completely random, right? Because it has random properties, but it has patterns, right? But if you start generating content that falls out of these patterns, then the LLMs can no longer learn the patterns so well, because you get noise inside, essentially. So they deteriorate. But there's papers on this that I looked at, but I'm not a immediate expert on this subject, though it's proven that it happens, and it makes sense. It's kind of like any other signal to noise type of system, be that sound or whatever. If you introduce too much noise to a channel, the signal to noise ratio deteriorates. Therefore, you might not get the right signal in the end and make a mistake. So yeah, it's a very interesting field. But like you said, we're gonna have to see what
happens, right? It's just determined by what happens in the future. Nobody can really tell what that's going to be right now. I firmly believe that. But I do believe in a fantastic future, OriginTrail has the best potential at getting humanity to where we need to be. So hey, if we're walking the road, at least let's walk it the right way, or try to walk it the right way. That's my opinion.
So you're optimistic.
I'm beyond optimistic.
The advent, well, don't go too far, but that AI is going to bring good things. And there's a whole other school, the doom and gloom. They have a different name, but it's like doom and gloom.
Yeah.
they want to shut down AI research because they're afraid of what might happen.
Well, that's the thing. In my opinion, I've always been somewhat, again, in the middle, because no matter what, I view AI as a tool. And just as we have hammers, we can choose to bash someone's skull in, or we can build a home for people, you know? And that's why I say it's important to participate in OriginTrail now, because OriginTrail is our hammer, right? We're going to, building this ecosystem will allow us to know how we want to construct the future of humanity's data pipelines. How is this going to interact with humanity? Can it have a potential positive outcome? Well, we hope so if we build it right. Sam Altman's biggest goal was hitting alignment with AI systems and human outcomes, right? Like human desires. Can we truly align AI with human intentions? Well, a lot of what we're seeing thus far is AI models are consuming human data without rewarding humans for creating the content it creates. That's not aligned with human intentions. If I work 15 hours, I want to get paid for 15 hours of work. So we already see that that's in misalignment. Well, OriginTrail has a solution to that, because we're able to categorize human creativity at the data level, at the knowledge, not even at the data level, at the knowledge level, because you're literally creating composable knowledge, assets of knowledge on what's in your brain directly. And this is pretty much bagged and tagged, sealed, and then you can then do what you want to do in an electronic network with it. That's light years ahead of what's taking place right now. So yeah, I would say that OriginTrail has the greatest potential to have a positive outcome on humanity if we all participate and make sure it does that.
Well, let's talk about that, if you don't mind.
I don't.
In order to get these network effects, obviously people have to be contributing to the network, building the network. Tracverse is one of these ways. The paranets are another way. Let's start with the paranets. The only publicly announced paranet so far is this decentralized science paranet. If you have any juicy updates you're willing and able to share about that?
I hope very soon, because there's a lot of really, really good developments there. Essentially, the idea is that we feed it a bunch of the latest scientific research, and then it's able to not only summarize it and make it simple to understand, which is a big problem, especially for companies. There's a lot of these good new research coming out, and then it takes years for like a business to actually have time to like understand what's happening and how they can use it, and then what they need to build. So it's like it's a very long cycle. So it can make this cycle much shorter, but not just that, it can also produce new hypotheses, scientific theorems in a way. And yeah, we're working, we're helping the guys from ID Theory who are actually very knowledgeable. Some of their team has been in the semantic web world like many years ago, and still obviously in there, but also in the blockchain space. So they're a really, really good partner that understands. It's easy to work with them. They understand both worlds, which is not common. There's not that many people who are knowledgeable in knowledge graphs and blockchains at the same time. So yeah, there's a lot of exciting things happening there. But paranets also in generally, there's a lot of excitement for paranets. People approach us a lot. And actually, right as we speak, maybe like 30 minutes ago, we have just launched a new website, which is at ChatDKG.ai. That's not ChatGPT, it's ChatDKG.ai, where actually you can learn more about how you can launch a paranet and how you can get in something called an inception program, basically, where as Trace Labs, we're offering people help and resources to start their own paranets, which, from what I understand, one of those might actually be Tracverse.
Correct.
Whoa. Juicy alpha here.
I guess so. Here it comes.
Let's talk about Tracverse.
Did I reveal something I shouldn't?
Well, we can't. No, actually, Giga already posted on, as soon as I made a post staking his live, Giga was like, so does this mean the Tracverse paranet's coming? But we can, talk about whatever needs. Yeah, we can dive into it.
Well, what is Tracverse? Let's start with that.
All right. Well, Tracverse is my attempt at building a decentralized storytelling ecosystem. Now, when people hear storytelling, they usually think, oh, I sat by the long lake and the man appeared, like some short story or something. But it's actually more than that. Fundamentally, what I believe is that stories is actually an extension of the DIKW model, the data information wisdom knowledge model, right? Think about it like human history. We've evolved to where we are, not by, no offense, memorizing Metcalfe's law, right? Most times, I said no offense, man.
Yeah, I took it anyway.
It was there to take.
We evolved by literally like memorizing stories. Stories is what governed all of the future of humanity. In fact, it's so true that they even put the stories on walls. We find them in caves. We find them in scrolls,
Before we had computers, is how we share knowledge with each other.
That's how we did it. It's the OG decentralized knowledge graph, walls and caves, man. So when I started looking at how powerful the concept of a story is, I said there must be some sort of science behind how to leverage the power of that concept of a story. Not he walked down the road, the power of stories themselves. And I think that generally, what Tracverse really is an experimentation between harnessing the power of stories themselves and combining it with Metcalfe's law via the OriginTrail decentralized knowledge graph. So it's creating a living ecosystem of humanity's stories that we can all participate in building. So fundamentally, Tracverse is, again, a decentralized storytelling ecosystem, but it's built by everyone's stories, and not just again, comical stories, but everything has a story. That bottle right on this table here, it has a story from its supply chain, from the manufacturing process. I remember one time you guys showed a video about the yogurt, and I had no idea that it was like all these different countries, all these different farms and all this stuff combined together just to create this tiny little product, the story behind that is actually insane when you think about it. So that's pretty much what Tracverse is trying to utilize and capture. And the first example of that was the Marifa Omniverse. So the Omniverse is just a portion of the power of what Tracverse is trying to harness. And using that same power, that concept, I forged the planets and the characters within the Omniverse to say, hey, if I generate an image from Midjourney, right? Cool. People look at it, they say, oh, that's a nice image. But then when you bake that image with an asset graph, and then you give that image a story, it's completely different. It's no longer just an image. It's like, oh, wow, this is something that means something to you. But now it not just means something to you, it's literally interconnected with all the other assets inside the decentralized knowledge graph itself and their stories. That's the value of Metcalfe's law. By connecting the items now, so now you took an image, you added a verifiable story on top of it. It's a piece of knowledge asset, so it's tradable as well. And now you're able to connect this with other items. Well, the value potential is limitless, you can see.
Quick question. I can imagine two kinds of story networking. There's one in which there's a bunch of stories by a bunch of people, and they can read each other's stories. And the other one is where there's a bunch of people working on one story. Do you imagine those two kinds, or I'm guessing your emphasis is on the first kind, not the second?
Actually, Bob, you catch on a bit too quick. I didn't think you would break it down that understand. But yes, actually, Tracverse itself, when you look at the Tracverse ecosystem, the Marifa Omniverse is set up as one governed story. So it's a community governed story, right? Everyone is going to be participating in the governance of that story. But there are the individualized stories that also could be more, I guess, what's the word? Without revealing too much stuff that I have coming soon, I will just say that, yes, I do envision multiple types of stories. And one firm example of a large-scale story is the actual Marifa Omniverse itself, right? And I will show in the future how these other stories can interact and merge together to form something new, right? But
interesting term you've introduced, the governance story governance,
Yes.
which comes to play when there's multiple authors of one single story.
Mm-hmm. And that's I believe as well, the future of content creation itself. Governed content. I believe people want to be more immersed in the things that they consume. This is why you buy Tommy Hilfiger or any brand, because you see that name, you take it and you put it on your body.
Hoka.
Hoka, right? The shoe, we were talking about your shoes earlier. You see the brand name, you may, what makes you want to put it on your body is the story. Hey, maybe Hoka, every shoe you buy, they plant 10 trees in, I don't know, wherever. You want to support that story. That's what you want to attribute your identity to. You want to bind your identity to the fact that somebody plants trees somewhere.
Yep.
So people want to be more engaged in reality itself. So I think that the DKG is actually beyond any other substrate. If you try to put it on a regular blockchain or anywhere else, you're wasting time. You have to use the DKG to get this result of merging stories and your influence in stories with the real world. You have to use the DKG. It's the only substrate that can do it right now in the way that I envision.
So if somebody like Amos 2.0, someone's listening and is like, I've got a great idea for my own project to launch in the DKG, they just go to the ChatDKG.ai and they fill out an application or something like that?
Yeah, basically there's a very short, simple website that explains the idea of the truly open AI and basically lets you apply. So once you're there, there's going to be a form, very simple form asking you a bunch of questions. So you, Amos 2.0, whoever you are, just head over to the website, fill out the form real quick, and get in touch.
And where can people find out about Tracverse or participate?
Yeah, absolutely. If you are interested in participating, you can go to tracverse.com or you can go to marifa.tracverse.com. I didn't take any time to really explain Marifa. So Tracverse is pretty much the organization that's kind of constructing whatever you see on top of the OriginTrail DKG. Marifa represents the actual fake reality that's in the decentralized knowledge graph. So all the characters, the planets, the world, and all that, that's Marifa.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to participate in Marifa, you can stay tuned real soon. I think between either this week or next week, we'll be releasing something where anyone can be a part of Marifa and participate, and which ties into the Tracverse paranet. But more on that another time. And if you would like to build, of course, the OriginTrail ecosystem itself, I would say everybody's partnered by default. If you're building an ecosystem, there's no reason why you wouldn't necessarily want to share with somebody else. It's open, like everybody's open, unless you have, of course, proprietary data, which has a private place. But generally speaking, I'm open to building with anyone. So feel free to contact me on Telegram as well, or hit me up in the OriginTrail chat. This type famous. Somebody will tag me.
There you go. So we got a couple of minutes left here before we got to get out of here. I wanted to ask you, Branimir, real quick about this. I don't know how you say this. DMaaST, DMaaST.
Yes.
That was just announced. What is that? What's that? Why should I be excited about that?
Yeah, that's a new project funded by the European Commission, which is all about industry-grade digital twins in the manufacturing space, but more specifically in aerospace, and is being built on the DKG. The DKG is basically the knowledge layer, and actually there will be 2 layers of digital twins on top, built out by major European companies and universities. It's a 4-year-long project. We'll be building a lot of different things there, but essentially all on top of the DKG, and learnings from the project will be fed back into the DKG. So it's a lot to be excited about. It's a really, really interesting new avenue where the technology hasn't been deployed before. It just kickstarted this week, so we're warming up. We're going to be doing a bunch of technical design in the coming months with partners, which is great because every time we do that, they learn about the DKG and like their minds get opened up, and we essentially get new partners who will quite often become just more than just partners on one project. So yeah, that's the new project that's coming up. It's really, really interesting, and others, but like we cannot actually. I'm trying to think what's shareable or not at the same time. So
Just say it all.
Yeah, we won't be upset.
This is
Yeah,
a
I know
private
anything you want to
conversation.
say.
I know,
Nobody
but-
else is listening right now. It's just us.
yeah,
in this
so
room.
the four of us. Yeah,
No, it's the six of us. Be careful.
yeah, somewhere in the desert, not in like the most popular city in the world. But yeah, that's it's going to be really cool. There's a lot of exciting things coming up.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Tracverse paranet announcement is the most exciting one we've heard so far. So.
Not Bob not the actual inventor of the internet, Ethernet being here. No, not that.
Definitely not.
I finally beat you. I finally.
Fine, you've been trying. All
I've been
these
trying
years.
my whole life.
Well, actually, now it's a race who runs more nodes, right? The professor has a node of his own on the DKG, and
Indeed. I have one running, so I need to launch one more to beat you at that.
yeah,
So look out. I'm coming.
battle.
Come on.
Awesome.
I think it's a fun, inspiring note to end this conversation on. Thank you, Dr. Metcalfe. Thank you, Branimir. Thank you, Amos. Follow the Marifa. Follow Tracverse.
Yep.
Follow OriginTrail on Twitter, everywhere else. Anywhere people can follow you?
Yes. My email is etherdad@gmail.com.
I love it. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
And on X, you're on X, right?
Hmm?
And people can follow you on X on Twitter.
Oh, on Twitter, yeah, but I don't know what my handle is.
Yeah.
We'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah, we'll announce it. In fact, it's actually on the tweet stream.
Yeah,
so
sure,
people
yeah,
just give him a follow. Click his name
Yeah.
and hit follow.
You can follow me everywhere at MadDopematic, MadDopemadic. And I got to think of a paranet to launch also. I'm gonna
Shameless
brainstorm
plug.
after this.
I'm going to shameless plug. He has a YouTube channel where he does music as well. Feel free to check it out. It's really awesome. Just want to say.
Music Paranet.
Yeah, I'll think of something. Appreciate the shout out.
Awesome. Thank you also for hosting the show, man.
My
Thank
pleasure.
you.
Happy
Thank
to happy to be in person with everyone here.
It's amazing.
And thank you to everybody tuning in live.
Awesome. Thanks,
Awesome.
everyone. Okay.
Thank you.
This has been On Track, brought to you by OriginTrail. If you like what you heard, consider giving the show a follow and leaving a 5-star review. You can keep up to date with OriginTrail on Twitter/X at origin_trail. That's ORIGIN_TRAIL. And you can follow me, your host, at MadDopematic. That's MadDopemadic. Until next episode, trace on and stay on track.